Welcome back to the Pathways of Peak Performance. I am your host, Amber Stitt, and I thought I would just check in with the listeners and let you know a little bit about what we've been doing internally here on the team, and even just really using the focus on talent category, one of the pillars, the foundational pillar, and let you know what I've been doing here, even in my own world. And so I wanted to share a little bit. I've been asked to speak to different advisory groups talking about the personal branding. And really, it starts stemming from how to train teams on what they should be doing online for marketing and for their personal brand. But it really was booked before I had purposely scheduled to go to a Pete Vargas Stages workshop. It's a conference in Denver. And so I had scheduled these presentations. I've done them before. I get asked to help with groups to give some ideas on really how to communicate best with their clients and overall build some confidence on camera. And so I go to the Vargas conference called Stages, and that was a game changer in so many ways. And I can't dive into that completely today, but to stay on task, I wanted to share some of the learnings I personally had. I want you to know that I'm continuing to evolve, add more to my personal development plate. And it's just always a work in progress. And so I wanted you to know that we're doing the work here on our team and we're training hard. And hopefully this will motivate you to think about things a little bit differently. What kind of impact you want in any relationship you have, whether it's business or personal or overall just for yourself. And so I'm almost taking a little bit of what I teach in workshops and plugging in a little bit of what I've learned personally for myself. And so I thought this would be a shorter podcast episode today, but to share, give you some inspiration, and hopefully you can apply that into your own lives. And so before we jump in, I wanted to share a little bit about how I became so involved with marketing. And it was really about 2018. I had started kind of phase two. I've been in business for over a decade, but I went out on my own in 2018 and I was pregnant at the time. And I thought I really need to build a practice around what works for my family and this new family that I'll have. And so when I went out on my own, I had partnered with a team that we really worked nationally in all states, but could be virtual too through Zooms. And this is really before the 2020 shift where a lot of businesses went online. But having that online presence, you really have to figure out ways to help people, give people access to information. And so a lot of people feel stuck on social media with their branding, their marketing, and their websites. And so I had kind of gone through this before COVID and then see what people are doing after the fact. But I remember around that time when everything was getting a little interesting and people were working from home, I said, what are people going to do? I've already been set up for this life. And I had gone purposely around that time on YouTube and was really searching for different ways to present. That's where video production became really crucial for our business. And a lot of people started podcasting. And so a lot of people tried to revamp their businesses and found ways to generate revenue and speak to their clients and people. All types of businesses had to really pivot and rethink how they were doing things. And some of it was just for the better. How do we then use some of the technology and innovations? And so that's where it really started for me, though, to start studying. And so I'm looking at YouTube. I actually had gone through and bought some professional cameras, and I really wanted to do more out of my house. And we were all pretty scared, but what are we going to do at this point moving forward? I always wanted to be sure I could work from anywhere. So that's really where it started. And I had hired some teams to bring in production equipment into my office so I could figure out how to present, how to be media ready, and how to be consistent with my plan. And so part of that is the reason why I had been asked to speak quite a bit about this for other businesses. How did they become more confident on camera? And so that's really where I think when you look at some of the personal developments and focusing on talents, there's a quote by Tony Robbins that says, the strongest force in the human personality is the need to stay consistent in how we define ourselves. And so we really want to be consistent with the work. And that's where that personal development comes into play. And what do you want to share with other people? And so a lot of times when I work with even my nonprofit Women in Insurance and Financial Services, if they're not a self-employed person, they sometimes feel like if I'm an employee, why would I spend a lot of time branding or marketing my own personal self if I'm not even a business owner? And I think we have to really rethink how that can be. And while working with teams, they'll ask me if we do LinkedIn, that's not a great place for clients and we have a lot of solicitations. But as you're really building out a set of connections, your network virtually and in person, I think both are important. It's interesting how different people within your tribe, your community can help you propel you forward. And sometimes we have to go back to that network to see who are the like-minded individuals that you might not have had access to to you because maybe you don't live in the same state. And so when you think about how you want to show up online, on camera, however you're communicating through the platforms that you prefer on social media, I think that some people need to feel that reward where they need a high grouping of followers. Or I've had other bigger influencers say it's sometimes the vanity metrics, and some of these metrics are actually paid for. And so sometimes we are comparing audience size to a fictitious audience size that's out there being conjured up. And so just really sticking back to, what do you consistently want to say to people when you show up in every conversation? And I think that really goes back to, take it seriously about how you want to be in your relationships. What do you want to say when you're showing up, and what do you consistently want people to think about you? And so I really want to bring that home on the podcast, because it might feel like if I don't have a direct metric to a sale, to some revenue, it doesn't feel super purposeful. But the more people you can motivate and inspire, they might reciprocate that relationship. And the more people you're going to meet, potentially more meetings, more business ideas, more strategic partnerships. I think that is so important. And over the last few years, I've really done a lot of that personally. And the expansion of business opportunities that have come from that, it's a game changer. And so really thinking about ways that you can participate, kind of pushing yourself to that next level. I'm happy to provide resources. Books are always one of those things. I can always give more resources if there's just something you're looking for. If it's to really, truly figure out your story, I recommend The Stage, the workshop there. And there's a couple others I would refer to that are more like one-on-one coaching. I know you can do that through a couple different platforms, and I can share with you personally what I've done. But there are ways to push through what might be blocking you from going to the next level. I'm telling you, sometimes you have to spend money and have some people train and work alongside you to see your blind spots. And I think that's back to, even when I talk about focusing on community, it is so important to have people help see where maybe you could even improve because you're capable. And sometimes we have limiting beliefs and we say, I don't think I can because this is just how I am. And with different people on your team, whether it's even literally on your team or you're part of that team, you can always work a little bit harder and push a little bit even bigger and think big. And it might not make sense perfectly at that moment, but I promise I've even seen that even in this last year, the relationships, the training, the coaching has really pushed through and helped our team grow. And so any way that you can do that for you, I just always say to motivate you to think about, really, I think the biggest currency is the way you communicate and put yourself out there is going to be so important as we move into the future. As we have technological advances, if we don't know who we are to our true core and we're not completely trying to improve that and seek out some guidance and community and support, I think that there's a point where people might stop being relevant. And that's just, it's not something that we want to do, especially with our pillars of pathways to peak performance. So really starting with number 1 and ending with number 5 in your community. Who is supporting you? And are you pushing yourself out there and spending that time to personally invest in yourself? Make sure you're doing that. And even just little things you can do, even if it's 10 to 15 minutes a day. We're doing that every day here on our team. And it's so helpful getting that mindset right. So I just wanted you to think a little bit differently about whether you're an employee, a business owner, or a combination. Think bigger, because you never know what kind of businesses you can create for yourself if you have a solution to a problem. And problems are a good thing. Often, if you can find a solution to a problem, there's a new business line or another way to add revenue to something that already exists. So I hope that gives you some inspiration on a shorter podcast today, and let us know if we can help. And I'll always take any messages. If you want to know what we're doing internally, I'm always happy to give a referral source. So thanks for listening and make it a great day. Talk with you soon.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of The Amber Stitch Show. For more information about the podcast, books, articles, and more, please visit me at amberstitt.com. Until next week, enjoy your journey at home and at work. Thank you for listening.